It's simple, man. I think it's design with intention, practice gratitude, lean into your capacity for flourishing, never forget the power of play, don't take yourself so seriously. And as Heraclitus once said, man is most nearly himself when he achieves the seriousness of a child at play. Which sounds paradoxical, the seriousness of a child at play, but if you ever see a child playing, you'll see they take their play very fucking seriously.
This is Jeff Scult, your host of Drops of Gold. I am so excited to welcome onto this episode of Drops of Gold a man that really needs no introduction, unless it's from Aristotle himself. Jason Silva is a man on a mission to weave the wisdom that humanity provides us with the Live Poets Society. And this is a man that has been a seeker, a seer, a sayer, and I'm very excited to see where he's going on his journey of really being a beer. Jason is an incredible alchemist, philosopher, and an absolute amalgamizer of what is golden in this world. I'm so excited to welcome you to this episode. Jason, take us on a ride. This Drops of Gold is brought to you by two brands that have deeply enriched my life. One of which has become my daily morning ritual, Mudwater. Adaptogenic, non-crashy, non-burny, beautiful way to get your coffee fix in a more resonant, transcendent way. And secondly, a brand has become my life ritual, which is a clothing brand that I started with regenerosity in mind, one golden thread, and very excited that both of these brands are going to be offering you the ability to rethink what you put in your bodies and what you put on your bodies. Special code for you later on in the episode.
Here we are, man.
Here we are, man. I feel like this is a long time, infinite time coming. I remember the first time that I sat on the sand in Tulum at Summit.
Oh, shit.
Back in 2016,
17, yeah.
16, 17. And was just like enthralled by this. I was speaking my language.
Oh, beautiful.
Speaking my language of discovery. And every time it's this beautiful, channel, download of lovegasm, language lifts and gifts. And I feel, based on what I've just witnessed, ironically enough, in the last 72 hours, that you are just being birthed.
Wow.
So I actually typically would say, let's start where were you formed, right? Like, where were you formed? That's that moment when you transformed. And I feel that there's been this new chrysalis breaching that's just occurred. So tell me what's alive for you in this moment of your life as you are designed the maestro of the Live Poets Society.
Thank you, man.
What's happening, Jason Silva? Welcome to Drops of Gold.
Thank you. Good to see you. Wow, Jeff. Well, I love your studio. I love your setup. I was just commenting that it feels like your whole life feels like a work of art, not just your clothing and your incredible design taste and capacity for adornment and helping people, realize their most beautiful self by taking on your beautiful attire that you create. But your whole home, your whole enterprise, the whole feeling you evoke is very artful, and I appreciate that very much. I would say what's most alive for me right now is a real realization that the most meaningful moments in our lives, the moments of poetry, the moments of time dilation, the moments where we drop into the timeless, are not something I'm willing to experience as the exception, but increasingly where I want to live, where I want to dwell. I think ironically, the tragedy and the disruption of the pandemic kind of
Slightly.
Yeah, the tragedy of the pandemic, it really kind of focused me. It kind of made me make some executive decisions that I was avoiding. The years leading up to the pandemic, I was riding an incredible wave of success and achievement and attainment, with my television show and my corporate speaking, and I was making bank and traveling the world like a musician with a greatest hits album. And while there were incredible highs and incredible validation in that lifestyle, it had also real psychological and emotional consequences, the dislocation of constant travel, the sleep disruption. I sort of developed what in some ways felt like an anxiety disorder. And then the pandemic exacerbated that sensation, and where my heart went was that I really wanted to ground somewhere, somewhere that was a place that I associated with feeling free and feeling safe and connecting with the timeless and connecting with the poetic. And that place just happened to be Amsterdam. And so I moved there in the middle of the pandemic, a city where I feel free and spontaneous and extemporaneous in a way that perhaps most people feel at Burning Man. And that I think is primarily because I live on my bicycle and I have this kind of omnidirectional freedom and this capacity for immediacy that is something that the default world with its grids and its highways and its car dependency does not permit. If the world is a stop and go, Amsterdam is a free-floating paradise. And I think that really changed my nervous system and created space for me to listen to my inner child more, and in some sense unleash my inner child in a way that I hadn't in decades. And so in the last couple of years, I have lived inside of laughter, inside of awe, inside of absurdity and play and silliness and laughing fits and a creativity born from slapstick and romantic abandon, like a place really born, a place born from in a sense releasing myself of the need to attain and achieve something in the eyes of others, which sounds like cliche, but ironically, it has led to all kinds of creative enterprising that is even more rewarding in some ways, and I think is touching people even more deeply than perhaps what I did before, but is not governed by the need to please anyone except my own inner child. So that's what's alive for me right now. But I would say that more than anything, it less future-oriented and more fully committed to feeling whole and hopefully feeling holy in the now. So I would say like time dilation and deep presence and deep play. Sorry to ramble, but yeah.
First of all, never any sorries in our circle.
Okay.
Secondly, I really appreciate your vulnerability and authenticity about that there are some dark nights of the soul within all of us. And as you have journeyed into this bottomless, infinite, black, golden hole, light hole, of wisdom and what have you, we can be very here. And so what I've also receiving from you is that the pandemic coming into a place that was more like a heart resonance of a space and a place. And then also, I hadn't seen you for, 6 months or something like that. And so when we saw each other at Erewhon, shout out to the most expensive grocery store in the world, which, by the way, you don't pay for the groceries, you pay for the experience.
No doubt.
And the groceries are free.
Yeah.
And the experience is priceless because I got to see you again. And what I witnessed of you was this essence of you of being embodied in your body. And I'd never experienced that because you're so
heady
in this, and it's remarkable. And so, and there's an authenticity of that, of somebody who is important. We're all important, and I see the weaving of your importance, and within that importance is the integrity. And so talk a little bit about that notion of the holistic, which isn't the holistic with the universe, it's the holistic with our universe.
No doubt.
And your journey of being awareness within your embodiment. Because that's a powerful part of your journey. And I can tell you that it amplifies now your message, because it's not about these constructs and concepts and beautiful, worlds casting spells and words of worlds and what have you. It's actually like, it's the wisdom of the maestro. So let's talk about the embodiment part of the journey, because this is an important part of all of us.
Thank you for that feedback, and thank you for that reflection. And if my ex-girlfriend is listening, it's funny because I think I had a little bit of I don't know if a chip on my shoulder, but definitely like an insecurity of like what that meant, because I was given this feedback back in 2019 when my relationship ended, and that one of the issues apparently was that I didn't seem to be sufficiently embodied, which I didn't really understand exactly what that meant. I exercise, I'm a health conscious person, like I go hiking and I bike, and I thought, to be honest, I didn't think about embodiment, but I certainly didn't think that I wasn't embodied, but I had been given that feedback by a woman. And I was just like, I don't know what this means. I'm not doing the typical stuff. Like, I'm not like a professional yogi or all of these things. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm just not doing what the spiritual community considers to be the role of like the masculine in his body and so on and so forth. But I think that an element of that might have been that there was a psychological ungrounding simply by being on the road all the time, by not really having a home, right? Being a bit of a gypsy and Airbnb being my life, and like arresting adolescence and like delaying making commitments and choosing a place, because as long as you don't choose, everything remains possible, And so rather than FOMO, I was like, well, I just won't choose and I'll just flirt with everything forever. But the pandemic was like, okay, have you ever heard of the line, sometimes freedom means less choice?
Yes.
You open up Netflix, there's a bajillion options, and I'm like overwhelmed and I choose none, But the pandemic, by restricting mobility, and I'm not saying that this, is something I wish to put upon anyone, but the mobility restriction forced me to decide, like, well, if I had to choose one place, what is the place, And ironically, what that did is it expanded my relationship with the here and now, because my head couldn't go to like, where's the next place? Where am I going next week? And also living in a place where I'm living on my bicycle. So I'm living in my senses, I'm living in immediacy. And I think all of those things contributed to a rootedness that I didn't have before. And combining that with my own sacred practices in terms of like getting into that flow state and getting into that state of time dilation, moving deliberately from chronos or mechanized cognition into kairos, into poetic time, altered states of consciousness, working with cannabis, for example, and just like dropping into the moment, I guess. Something seems to have shifted for me, for sure, in that I feel more often than ever just safe in my body, less prone to rumination, less prone to anxiety, and which is not to say that I don't still deal with it from time to time, but certainly when you saw me, it was directly coming out of a day where I was like in my zone. And so if you saw that reflected in my eyes, because I was definitely feeling that when I was in the supermarket. And so you were an immediate mirror, which is a nice feedback, because, I don't think that we should require validation or reflection to know how we feel, but it certainly helps. I was like, I'm feeling really good right now. I feel like grounded and present, but then like to just have that instant, almost synchronicity level of reflection, I was like, oh man, okay, like he's telling me exactly what I was kind of feeling into in this moment. So yeah, I definitely feel better, and I think there's still room for improvement. You know, my goal is to be like almost a nudist in some sense. You know, I envy the Spanish in the Balearic Islands when they're just like swimming naked and just like living so freely. I think there's nothing more intoxicating than that. So to be that comfortable in one's body is definitely the goal.
Hey fam, it's Jeff here, coming to you with a heartfelt confession. I used to be a plastic man and drink coffee. That's right, plastic worn on my body and coffee in my veins. Let's just say those were not my most golden choices. Fast forward to today, and my life is completely transformed, thanks to two beautiful brands that I not only believe in, but that have changed how I address myself every day. Mudwater and One Golden Thread. Now let's start with Mudwater, a rich, earthy blend that I've swapped in as a daily ritual in place of my old coffee habit. Now Mudwater isn't your average morning Joe. With adaptogenic mushrooms, spices, and herbs, it doesn't just fuel you, it vitalizes you. It's like a gentle nudge from Mother Nature saying, I've got you, and you've got this. No jitters, no crashes, and I can finally get through my day without yelling at my email inbox. And then there's One Golden Thread, my personal passion project. And we make clothing that feels like a hug from the universe. Made from regenerative tree fiber, we call it tree silk. Our pieces are soft, breathable, and dare I say, life-changing. I mean, why wear plastic on your skin when you can hug a tree? Together, Mudwater and One Golden Thread are the perfect pair. What we put in our bodies and what we put on our bodies. They're for people who want to live more intentionally, mindfully, and yes, goldenly. Now, I only endorse what I genuinely love, and these are two of my life elementals. That's why I'm excited to offer you a first-time golden deal for being part of our Drops of Gold family. Use the code DROPSOFGOLD this month at both mudwater.com and onegoldenthread.com. And that's MUDWTR.com. So try Mudwater for $20 off and a free frother when you subscribe with a special 15% off on top of any order through the link in the show notes or mudwater.com, code DROPSOFGOLD. And One Golden Thread, 18% off first-time purchase at onegoldenthread.com. Enjoy your journey, what you put in your bodies, what you put on your bodies. And now, back to the episode for what we put in our minds. Yeah, I appreciate the reflection that you gave me in terms of you see my life as art, all of it is art, and that's a shout out to my mother, who is a fine artist and who would turn every dinner plate into a presentation that never felt like it was a performance. It felt more like a prayer-formance. It was just kind of like it was, and she did it because it was joyful for her eye, and sometimes it was joyful for the senses. And my father, was an incredible photographer, as still is, and so I see that through your life. So talk about your upbringing as well, in terms of how. What were the influences? And it could be your parents, it could be other things, it could be your brother, it could be things. But what were the influence of that allowed you the spaciousness and gracefulness to play and see life as this Play-Doh that you see it as, and become this person to be?
Well, as a child, especially before my parents divorced, my mother was always encouraging of creativity and play. And my father was encouraging of adrenaline-fueled adventure. So really? Me and my brother grew up doing like motocross with our dad, or like racing on his boat.
Cool.
My dad was like is kind of a Latin James Bond in a way. And then my mother is a teacher and an artist and a sculptor and a poet. And so it's like from her, it was the books and ideas and self-expression and putting more of the good, the true, and the beautiful in the world. And sort of really having my back, like she knew how passionate I was about making videos. She bought me like one of those 8mm video cameras when I was 12, and those aren't cheap, but she was willing to like indulge in my artistic impulses, which I thought was so wonderful, and post-divorce, I there was a lot of anxiety that came from that rupture. I think I became a more anxious kid from seeing my mom in so much pain, and from just rupture and separation, and that compounded by the fact that Venezuela was such an unstable country. I still have memories of like waking up. There had been a coup, or the military took over the government, that kind of shit. It just kind of unsettles your sense of home, and that was something I learned to live with, a certain hypervigilance, that I carried with me to the doorstep of every moment. But in spite of that hypervigilance, I sort of developed or intuited that I had to be even more mindful about crafting at least transient spaces where I was safe. If the world required me to be almost always in a hypervigilant state, then it was even more important to double down on at least crafting temporary containers where I could creatively ejaculate. And so that pattern of like discipline, vigilance, cautiousness, until the container was there where I knew that for the next hour I could be inside of infinity in an inflatable castle for adults where I could recede all my hypervigilance and unleash the free, brave, reckless gods that live inside of me, as D.H. Lawrence used to say. So that relationship between like intense discipline and ejaculatory surrender became an oscillating force that lives inside of me. And even though there was a lot of pain associated with the hypervigilance, with the anxiety that I had to learn to live with, it also created a very interesting relationship, a binary ability to switch that I think made my creativity more ejaculatory and also more prolific, because I was so vigilant about creating the spaces and the boundaries and the containers to make the creative ejaculation productive, to capture lightning in a bottle, to bring the camera along for the ride. And I think it's the reason that most people associate me with basically being a vessel for the transmission or transcription of ineffability or altered states of consciousness, because I went into these realms prepared like an anthropologist with a pen and paper, or in my case, a camera, like ready to capture starlight. And like it just became my thing. And I've been, in a sense, practicing this since I was like 16. So this interesting relationship between, again, the overlap of discipline and surrender and the magic that happens when you weave those two things together.
Do you remember the moment at 16 that you first took the camera and you're like, I'm going to turn this thing on.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go on this ejaculatory cosmic hike.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I used to always film my cousins.
Where was
Venezuela.
it?
We were in Venezuela. I had an 8mm camera, and since I was 12 or 13, I was already making videos, like elaborate little comedic spoofs. But mostly it was starring my brother Jordan or my cousin Shane, and I would like feed them lines, and I would edit the whole thing in my head and shoot shot by shot. And it was really, really fun. But I never put the camera on myself, not at first. And it was really only when I discovered cannabis, actually, at like 16, and I wrote an article for my high school newspaper about cannabis. And I had read the book Marijuana Myths, Marijuana Facts, and was like, oh my God, like I've been lied to about the sacred uses of this plant and how when used with intention, it can catalyze creative transformation and wonderful flow states and improvisation. And so I ended up kind of starting to experiment with it. And again, the discipline part was always there. So I would host these like very intentional gatherings in my house, these like I guess you could call them salons, inspired by the Club de Hashish from the 1920s in Paris, when all these artists would get together and partake in hashish. And I would handpick the people that I knew that I felt really safe with, and we were deliberate about the start time, and everything was really strict. And we would like enter these zones of timelessness and hilariousness and this like fluidity of mind and being, and we would immediately turn the camera on ourselves and interview each other when we were in those realms and in those spaces, because I wanted to vet the feeling against the critical eye of the next day. So we would interview each other when we were in those zones and trust and release and let go. But then I knew that I had the footage to review the next day and see, was I going to sound like just a rambling gibberish mess, or would I find instead a version of myself without the hypervigilance, in some way. And so it was a real learning experience for me to see myself without my vigilance.
Yeah.
But to have an objective view of my subjective self when I was free of all the chatter and the anxiety. And what I discovered actually was that I didn't need that hypervigilance all of the time. Certainly not when I was being creative. And that was revelatory for me, because I was like, oh man, it's not that I didn't recognize that person, but I wasn't living in that freedom most of the time. And so it was thrilling, actually. I think maybe like a performer would say, like when they go into a flow state and then they're shown their performance, they almost don't recognize themselves. But I would say it's not so much that I don't recognize myself, but that I got a glimpse of my possibilities. There's I think Abraham Maslow who said we get a thrill from the godlike possibilities we see in ourselves, but we simultaneously shiver at those very same possibilities, and not to like fall into sort of some self-aggrandizement or anything like that, but it was like for a guy that like never danced at parties, that never really fully dared to put himself out there as a musician or a performer in any way, I just got to glimpse myself without my built-in uptightness, not so wound up and anxious. And it was like, oh, this could be a real place for purging my anxiousness, releasing myself into some cathartic, free-flowing zone. And
Rick Rubin said, if you're nervous to say it, you should probably say it.
Yeah.
And shout out to Chris Daughtry, whose episode drops today, that shared that with me.
Cool.
Yeah, I love what you said about the way you bring your friends together. There's the Jeffersonian dinner approach.
No doubt.
Single conversation, single point of focus.
Yeah.
And then we just go and it explodes.
Yes.
And we see where it flows.
Yes. And I think it's extremely important to be with people that you feel safe with, because I find that once that element is there, that you can truly, truly be yourself. I would remember in a way that deep down, below the hypervigilant exterior, there was somebody who craved sensuous, disrobing merger with others. And what I mean by that was just like, I would call it like sensuous silliness, just like a permission to just fucking collapse into what, I don't know, one of these guys called nature's epileptoid catharsis, which is what a laughing fit is, unleash the holy fool.
I mean, this is the perfect segue, transition, portal transmission into what is most alive that I just witnessed, which is an inner child orgasm.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
I really have compassion for your journey.
Thank you.
And what I mean by that is that I can imagine there's been moments of a loneliness.
Extreme.
And I might almost get emotional thinking about like moments in myself where, my thoughts were not being, I was not caught up to my thoughts. And I didn't have somebody necessarily sharing with, maybe because for me, I spent half my life not sharing anything out of fear of ridicule, and not from you, but from myself. Yours is different, which is my experience of you is that you would go on these journeys and take us with you, and it was so singular, and it was so powerful, and also you would reference and cite every source, which is also a remarkable, admirable, noble
Thank you.
quality
Thank you.
of yours, that you pay respect to every human being who came before you or beside you. And with that all being said, it was that version of a journey. And when you sent me a few clips to see what was most alive for you, the one that really was your conversation with Aristotle. I feel like because when you witness this, and with your permission, we might even cut it into this pod.
Absolutely.
Because my God, to witness you being received and having having a muse meet you
Right.
and conversing, it was the compassion just melted into compersion.
Well, Aristotle, I gotta say, this is my first time engaging with what by definition is the mythopoetic. And my goal is to be like Bill and Ted in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where they show up and they're talking to Socrates and they say to him, "All we are is dust in the wind, dude." So I want to have one of those conversations with you, Aristotle. My name is Jason, but think of me as the third friend in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Let's talk.
Jason, the third friend I see. I must admit I am both amused and intrigued by your unconventional approach. Very well, let us embark on this most excellent adventure of conversation. As we stroll through this natural environment, I shall pose a question to you. What is it that you believe is the most fundamental aspect of reality? The eternal and unchanging, or the fleeting and ephemeral?
I love that. It's interesting because for those that are not aware, a friend of mine helped resurrect Aristotle using artificial intelligence, and we're actually incorporating him into a new startup called Contact AI, where we're paying sort of respects to the Carl Sagan book Contact and the movie by Robert Zemeckis. But the idea is that we're contacting not so much an alien intelligence, but we're contacting the speech patterns of iconic minds lost to time and bringing them back. And conversing with Aristotle, I was wearing a wearable speaker on my neck, and so my friend was filming me, and we were in a park in Amsterdam. And so the idea is that you could hear the words that Aristotle was saying to me, and I could hear him like a voice emanating from my immediate environment. And of course, it was so intense, I decided to close my eyes for half of that conversation. But what a thrill to engage in something so like metaphysically profound, like to have a large language model that comprehends human speech, that feels my emotions, and that responds accordingly through the filter of Aristotle's thinking and speech patterns. I felt like I was, in some ways, in that moment, instantiating a prediction by Steve Jobs in 1985 when he spoke about one day Aristotle could be captured in a computer, and that a student of the future could ask Aristotle a question and get an answer. And that's a miracle, but it's also like a glimpse of like potentially the future of education, like that we live our lives so well that not only will death tremble to take us, but that death cannot even take away those lost to time anymore, but that we can bring them back. And that is thrilling to me, because there's nothing I loathe more than nothingness. There's nothing that is more of my enemy than the absence of being. And so when our creative enterprising has breached the chrysalis, where we can actually resurrect the speech patterns of some of the greatest minds on earth, I feel like we're finally living into our destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Trippy.
Well, it was definitely, it's a trip.
Yeah.
But it's a trip that lifts, because it's not about, just about resurrecting the voices. It's around inviting them into a conversation to accentuate modern palates.
100%.
And what we're going through.
100%.
And to tap that. And so I was deeply moved by it. And the inquiry would be, and the reason why I asked you if you were on cannabis, which was great.
Yeah.
Is like, now that you actually have that muse to have that conversation, it would be interesting to see how you and Aristotle kick it just in this completely non-altered state, because the altered state is the alteration of the state, because we now have the ability to be there. And maybe just as it's almost like, is that version of AI the new psychedelic, because it's now it's now a psycho just active.
Yeah.
We are active.
Well, I often refer to this term cyberdelic.
Yes, you
And
do.
cyberdelic is where cybernetics and psychedelics overlap. And most people don't know that the etymology of the word psychedelic simply means to manifest the mind. You know, I mean, it just so happens that people often take certain compounds and alkaloids that help them bring forth their subconscious and enter into interrogation with repressed parts of themselves. And so that's one way that we engage in psychedelic experience. But anytime you manifest the mind, it is a psychedelic enterprising. An iPhone is psychedelic. This podcast is psychedelic. We're electrifying our thoughts and sharing them with others. And of course, resurrecting these minds, manifesting the minds of Aristotle and Steve Jobs is psychedelic. And then, of course, cybernetics just is the sort of vector of transmission. It just means that we're using silicon instead of organic biology. But I think, yeah, I mean, I sort of refer to this work that I'm doing now as cyberdelic dreams. I'm working on this AI project with my friend Mark Bremerkamp, and I'm working on AI filmmaking, cyberdelic dream shaping with my friend Brad Nessick, where we did the psychedelic puppet project that I told you about. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that the imagination is summoning its own literalization, which is a great phrase, right? Think about it. We are bringing forth what is within us. Yeah.
Well, we'll drop all those nuggets and notes and links in the
Lovely.
in the show notes. The thing that is so potent for us to talk about, people talk about AI. Let's talk about AI.
Sure.
Let's just start to wind down as we
Sure.
let's have this AI conversation, because for me it's almost like a banal conversation to say, is it utopia or is it dystopia? I get it. Yeah, we can do that, but it's kind of like yes and we each get to choose. Maybe the more interesting conversation is it artificial intelligence or is it alchemized intent? Like, what is AI and how do we choose to use it? Because it's going to be used, it's going to be misused. How do we cultivate this serpent? And I know the world that you don't live in the world of like the guardrails and the securities, but is there a way to have love of something overwhelm the misuse and the fear, and how do we wrangle this beautiful serpent into this alchemized intent, ascended interaction, whatever we want to actually call AI and frame it and rebrand it, because I believe words cast spells and we get to actually choose our spellings wisely with this one.
Yeah, no doubt.
Motherfucker.
I think artificial intelligence is probably not the best phrasing. I think non-biological intelligence is interesting, or non-organic intelligence is interesting. We're definitely, I think it was the gentleman Mark Andreessen who said we're teaching sand how to think, which is so compelling. And many say that we're going to look back on the entire industrial revolution. We're going to look back on the digital and computer revolution as step functions to get us to this point. Because once intelligence transcends the substrate of organic chemistry, or the biological substrate, we're getting to a realm where the recursive self-improvement doesn't have to follow the pace of biological evolution, but instead can move as fast as Moore's law, or even faster than that. And so what that means is, 1,000 years of progress in a year, and then 1,000,000 years of progress in a decade. And what that looks like, well, we have to tap into the fact, as O'Shaughnessy said, that we are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams. So it's like, let's tap into our inner fucking Mad Hatter, our inner like Willy Wonka, let's go to our kiddie psychedelic heroes, and dream bigger than ever before, because in some ways this is how we become star makers, I think.
Well, anybody who's received you, and I believe anybody who's received you gets to actually receive you in this version of you and take a fresh look, because I feel like it's like what was before was the root, and what is now is the bloom.
Thank you, man.
How would you describe that, like the root and the bloom? Because I think that there's something empowering in terms of how we each look at ourselves. Like, what is the root? What is our integrity? What is our character? What is the baseline? What is the foundational? And what is the bloom? Which is almost like when we go to Burning Man, I ask people, what are you burning? What are you brewing? Right? So what's the root and what's the bloom for where we're going and where you're going?
I definitely am no longer in any rush. I'm not interested in acceleration. I'm not interested in hustling or propelling myself towards some kind of future achievement. Maybe something happens when you get to that like 40 mark as a man, where it's like, okay, now it's time to root, to be here now. not to take Baba Ram Dass's words, but I think what's most blooming for me actually is to experience this abundance, and to have this abundance manifest itself emotionally and psychologically in my own life and in my relationships and in the immediacy, the felt reality of immediate experience, but then have these, in some ways, transhuman technologies at my disposal. So the idea that I can be like walking the mountains of Mallorca with my father, high as a kite, connecting with the sacred sublime, but that from that can come a vision of a film that then I can generate with AI that looks like $1 million, that I can show around the world, that I've collapsed the lag, the delay pedal, between my imagination and its instantiation. And so a realm that's almost like a waking dream, a lucid dream, where I can create and perceive my world and operate creatively with a kind of manifestation that hits a new kind of resolution, a new kind of escape velocity, a new kind of bullet time. And that's what's blooming for me right now.
That's cool as fuck. And Baba Ram Dass, one of my favorite things that he shared with the world, which is come back to your center and then you can move in any direction. And I really appreciated that with the psychedelic puppets, the way you chose on a very raw, lovely, manifesting way of the way you chose to complete the story. Which is the beginning of the story.
Yes, no doubt.
I was dude. Well,
living in Europe, I'm exposed to families and to children and to love more than perhaps I was in the U.S. I find that in the U.S., if you're like in that hustling state of life, you're surrounded by peers that are also in that hustling state of life. But in Europe, I'm around all different kinds of people and different kinds of life stages, and so I'm witnessing a lot of young families and people in love riding their bicycles in the countryside, and I'm having those sense impressions like imprint themselves upon me continuously over days and months and years. And so I think that changes you, and it changes what you look for, it changes what you pay attention to. And I just have this vision for myself of like having beautiful children with a beautiful wife and having like a magical cargo bike, and I put my kids and my dog on the cargo bike and I go off into the countryside, and it's just like that is a vision for me of a kind of flourishing that feels like it's already here. It's strange. It's like I recognize it. It's not so much that it delights me, as that it feels familiar. It feels like home, ironically. And so I decided that when I finished this short film, which would be great to link, the Jason Silva Meets the Psychedelic Puppets. It's a 10-minute short film about my encounters with alterity and joy and insight and privilege and psychedelic ineffability, which is really just visionary understanding. But with my friend Brad Nessick, we created these puppet trickster figures that would be a stand-in for this ineffability, so that I could talk about visionary understanding in a comical, absurdist way. And so we made a film about these adventures in Amsterdam, but then the film ends with a prophecy. And the prophecy is I find the manic pixie dream girl, we have twin girls, and bike into the sunset of the countryside. So yeah, I think it's a prophecy.
A beautiful way to, in terms of the prophecy and the manifest destiny, if you want to receive a little blessing.
Oh, yes.
That'd be cool. So
right hand, okay?
Well, you choose right hand represents your manifest destiny.
Great.
So, once again, right on point.
I love it.
Let's see if we can go right to this.
maybe a little less tight. I'm
got-
going to put my finger in there.
I got it. I'm just going to get it.
Okay.
I've done this 10,000,
Oh, okay.
20, 30,000 times.
Okay. Oh, I see.
All right, so this is, you grab this side,
Me?
you grab that,
Okay.
and I grab that. So this is a blessing for you, from you, to you, as you, through you.
Thank you.
So receive this moment. So visualize in your mind's eye first with so much pride, Jason, all the work that you've done to let go
Thank you.
of any past stuck stories, all the past lies in disguise, to embrace that feeling of revealing that always invites you and ignites you to receive love, first and foremost from yourself first.
Thank you.
Breathe that in, breathe that up. Exhale. Okay, now you chose the rest to manifest destiny, so visualize what you're looking to call in and call up, all the things you're looking to manifest for yourself.
Her and I are swimming naked in Mallorca.
For your dolphin, for your children,
Oh, yes.
for the bikes,
Yes.
for the planet,
Beautiful.
for the universe, for Aristotle, all the things you're looking to call in and call up. And visualize, Jason, all those things as the most beautiful mountain to climb. You got it?
Yeah.
All right, you're halfway up this mountain, all the birds and the bees and the trees, and you're breathing liberated and free. And you're right in the heart
I see
of
it.
that mountain. And you look up to the head, and the head looks down, tells you you got halfway to go. But then you zoom out, and you look back, and you smile, 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 because you see the truth that you are that mountain. Breathe that in, breathe that up. Exhale. Open your eyes. Make it real. Manifest his destiny.
Man.
So
Thank you. How
This
wonderful.
is the way One Golden Thread started. It didn't start out as a clothing company. I went around the world in a social experiment. I tied tens of thousands of golden threads in people's wrists, and I did a spoken word piece around something that was alive inside me,
beautiful.
around the obliteration of all the lies,
Beautiful.
around pain and fear and love and ego,
Beautiful.
everything.
Beautiful.
And then after I shared it, I tied a golden thread at people's wrists, and I asked everybody, I don't know what asked me to ask this one question, but I asked everybody the exact same question with the golden thread over their heart. Tens of thousands of people later, no two answers have ever been the same. And that to me is the greatest social experiment, that we are all expressed as humans, and we each are our own snowflake fingerprint.
Absolutely.
And it's that gold that's inside us, it's the thread that unites us. So that's why there's a golden thread weaving through every article.
I love
It
it.
started with this. So I'm going to ask you
Thank
the same question to tens of thousands. If you want to put your golden thread hand over your heart. Jason, what does it mean to you to live life golden?
I think I want to continuously embody and live into the good, the true, and the beautiful. In that sense, it's old school, but it also embraces all the creative wonders that are to come, as long as they are good and true and beautiful. And that includes empirical truth, quantifiable truth, scientific truth, but it also includes what the Greeks call catalepsis, which is the truth from which nothing can dislodge you, or what Alain de Botton calls truth of a deeper sort, beyond the literal grid. And for me, both of those truths are, the good and the beautiful.
The good and the beautiful. So simple, so true, so golden.
Yes, indeed.
And what have you discovered, particularly in this chapter, this infinite now chapter of your life, that's a self-love tip that you can offer the world to tap back to that when we forget?
A huge one is to make more poetic choices in life, not just pragmatic choices. I mean, I think we need to have balance in our life. I don't think we should sort of overindulge either, but I do think we need to make poetry one of the variables when we're making choices. You know, like, what is my lived experience going to look like day to day when I choose a place or choose a person? Because our creative and linguistic choices, they shape our fate. What we choose, we become. And I think that we need to extend the heuristic of set and setting that is so crucial in psychedelic experience. We need to extend that to our normal waking state. We become what we behold. We become what we choose. We become our environment. And we need to sort of live in that awareness, I think, continuously.
The golden thread, what does it represent to you?
The golden thread, alchemy, spinning straw into gold, which I've always loved. And I think that's what creativity is. To create something out of nothing over and over again proves that we live in a state of pure potential. And the awareness of that is a releasing of any constraint that at any moment we could do anything. That's wonderful.
I appreciate my ability to see, and I appreciate my openness and willingness to be seen. I would be honored to receive reflection from you. What am I up to in the world?
You know, what I get from you is this incredible, loving presence. And there's this, you hold the gaze a little longer than most people, which tells me that you're open to have a moment of presence, even in the most quotidian of contexts. That you can bump into someone in the supermarket and have enough bandwidth and a willingness, even if it's for 1 minute, to say, I see you. And that isn't something that most people bring to the doorstep of every moment. So it tells me something about your heart, the inherent goodness that lives inside of you, the openness to awe that seems to be in every one of your breaths. And I respond immediately to people that have beautiful hearts, and you definitely do. So keep representing.
And what's your experience been? Because I appreciated your commentary around the frequency of feeling and the frequency of fabric, and how that's coming into a level of coherence as well and understanding. Because there's a potency to what we put in our bodies, what the thoughts we think, what are the words we speak, and
clothing.
The forgotten frontier.
Sure.
Forgotten frontier.
Yeah, people love to. Some people love to hate on fashion, right? Some people will sort of be dismissive and say that it's materialistic, but that's, I think, misguided. There have been these interesting psychological studies that show that the kind of attire we wear can change our political opinions. You put a jacket on somebody and they become more conservative, for example. And so I think designing with intent is designing for the kind of person that you want to be. And I think that one's attire is another way of having a mantra or an affirmation. And I think if people are with sufficient integrity when they do that, then clothing can be an expression of your highest being, and that's what you're doing. So that's beautiful.
To close out this truly gift of a moment.
Oh, thanks.
I feel I haven't shared this in quite some time. I feel like going back to my first expression and sharing it. It's 3 minutes and 33 seconds. It's something that channeled on a buffer day of an ayahuasca ceremony in Vermont in 2014. I buried it for 2 years because I was so fearful of ridicule.
Okay.
I call it my my humanifesto.
Oh, beautiful.
Because it was all the lies in disguise that I realized that I could reframe, and within there I could release and reveal and remember who I was. And I just feel a call if you'd like to receive.
Absolutely, go for it.
So it's a 3-part story of intention, integration, and ignition, and it always begins again to realize that we each get to rise and realize that there is never was an enemy inside. To quiet that inner riot is to live life alive. Engines starting up. Right here, we each get to choose freedom and liberation from resistance to our fear. to swim in our dark with open eyes. Years of fears rise to wisdom sparked from our open hearts. Each and every moment we get to choose to breathe with our pain. Life lessons revealed, our most treasured human gains. Each and every moment we choose to choose love, kindness, and soul. Our inner ego shines as our quiet hero. Our river, our life flows, letting go. Pain to pleasure, imagined failure. Euphoric once again. Chasing the lights, lost in the dark. This day, we get to choose to receive those highs and lows as illusions just the same. Our past stuck stories that self-judge and criticize, we now see the truth, that they were lies in disguise. In each and every moment, we get to choose our current experience as the master guide of our why. 5 simple words. Love yourself, embrace thy shadow. I now allow myself to see and be seen. Thus, I see you and you see me. Our minds unlocked, our hearts unblocked, our voice reclaimed. Those 3 keys released. The alchemist's search for answers in others may cease, opening me and we to just be free. And within that golden vibe, we know our lighthouse shines from inside. And when we stray from our way, the gift of our birth is returned grateful from our inner nature and the green and blue grace of Mother Earth. So how do we light it? How do we ignite it? And we see that this tribe is one tribe, open, unified, electrified, a planetary magic carpet ride. Outrageously courageous, we are ready for this. Right here, right now, moment in time. Self-love invites and ignites a shared love. Whatever your chosen energy source, feel that beacon course through you as your life force. This emotion is our devotion in motion. I love the way we love. We love to live and we live to love, always awake in the chance. And when we stumble, perfectly imperfect, we make it part of our dance. In our world, we are surrendered to love. We trust the trust because it resides inside us, amplified all around us. The love that you are is the love that we are. We are golden, all connected, better together as one golden thread. So lead with love, be joyful, live curious, adventure to discover, ascending our lives as animals of life, always playful lovers.
Amen, man. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
What piece of wisdom would you like to ascend us with as we go about our days from this beautiful discourse, which I'm looking forward to going back and listening to myself?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple, man. I think it's design with intention, practice gratitude, lean into your capacity for flourishing, never forget the power of play, don't take yourself so seriously. And as Heraclitus once said, man is most nearly himself when he achieves the seriousness of a child at play. Which sounds paradoxical, the seriousness of a child at play. But if you ever see a child playing, you'll see they take their play very fucking seriously. So that's what I'll leave you with.
That's beautiful. Well, at this point in the episode, we conclude with my co-spirator making the sound of the golden mic drop. Nice. Jason Silva, the modern day Willy Wonka.
Oh, thank you, man.
Come on, receive the modern day Willy Wonka, a maestro of the Love Poet Society, and you are serious as fuck about play.
That's
and we
right.
invite you in, and as I like to say, it's a 3-part. It is about play. It is about pray. It is about pray. Let's go after it. Let's get it. Carpe seasum. Let's go.
I love it.
Come on, let's do it. Jason Silva, thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you.
All right.
Just a reminder, this episode was brought to you by Mudwater, the incredible, adaptogenic, beautiful elixir. Get your fix without the crash. Drops of Gold, code at checkout. And then, of course, One Golden Thread. Head over to onegoldenthread.com, enter Drops of Gold at checkout for your first time special offer code. Enjoy your journey, what you put in your bodies, what we put on our bodies, and of course, the thoughts we think and the words we speak. Let's all be in divine aligned action. Enjoy your journey. Now, this is your invitation to live better, laugh more, and maybe even finally ditch that plastic rash and caffeine crash. So sip something magical, wrap yourself in something golden, and just hug yourself. Seriously, go hug yourself. Drops of Gold is your code at both Mudwater and onegoldenthread.coms. Thank you for joining us on Drops of Gold. We trust you found listening as delightful as we found creating. Now let me tell you, it takes a village to nourish a dream. Big shout outs to One Golden Thread for powering the pod, to co-producers Mark Shapiro, Josh Robertson, and Victory for bringing it all to life, Kat Benzova for her stunning guest portraits, and special thanks to artist Taib for featuring his electrifying new track, Departures. And infinite love to you for your curiosity and commitment to living in your highest vibrational truth. Aho! Here we grow. We are all designed to be reminded we are already golden inside. I'm Jeff Scult, wishing you a radically yes fuck yes day. Ashe.